What is common sense? According to Merriam-Webster, common sense is sound and prudent judgment based on simple perception of the situation or facts. So why does it seem that there is no common sense left in the world? Or if there is, there's very little of it. It seems that people are suffering from an overabundance of ego and trying to sound too intelligent, or suffering from too many academics that have a huge amount of book knowledge, right? There's a quote from Robert Ingersoll who said, "It is 1,000 times better to have common sense without education than to have education without common sense." So a lack of common sense seems like it has something to do with intelligence. The problem with intelligence is people use it in situations where they should be using their intuition or emotions. And it seems to be connected with life experience and observing the world around us. Just by simple observations on how the world works, we can learn everything that we need to learn. Through those observations, then we have those experiences, and then that's how we learn. So it has to do with senses, it has to do with observations, it has to do with interacting with the world around us. And intellectuals sometimes almost get in this analysis paralysis mode of thinking. And if they can't access their database of information in their brain, they become blocked, right? Common sense does not refer to using an encyclopedia or trying to access information that we have locked away in our brain. It's just trusting your own feelings, trusting your intuition about something. And those feelings and intuition come from experience. They come from observation. So it almost seems like people without common sense have a disconnect from the mental, emotional, and physical body. There's some disconnect happening. And it seems like a lot of these people without the common sense, they would almost rather convince themselves of a lie than to admit that they were fooled. And this even goes into the discussion of cognitive dissonance, that they can't handle it, they can't process it. It's just not their way of thinking. Sometimes because they've been conditioned for so long to think in a certain way, and they cannot admit when they were fooled or when they are wrong. So they almost have to have this mechanical way of thinking, this distorted way of thinking, to convince themselves of a lie instead of admitting the truth. So what is the common sense? What is it? What are some examples of common sense? We have the lady that spilled hot coffee on herself and she made a lawsuit against the fast food place. But shouldn't we know that hot drinks could possibly burn us? Isn't this common sense? Shouldn't we all know this? Isn't this something that we learn from observation at a very young age? Because at a very young age, we've certainly all had the experience of dribbling some hot fluid on our body, and we know that it hurts and we know that it burns us. So why now are there labels indicating that, in fact, what is inside this mug or this covered cup is indeed a hot drink? If you order coffee or tea, chances are that it's hot. So why should we need a label telling us? And I bring this up because I just want to show some examples of common sense in regards to COVID. And this is the first one that we can see. Basically, infected people, infections are rising, right? But nobody's really dying. And the infections, supposedly, even though this is completely fake nonetheless, but the infections are rising, nobody's dying, and people are somehow becoming healed. So common sense says, well, people can heal themselves then. This just goes away on its own. It's not so dangerous. So why would we need a vaccine for this then? Good question. Next example. This photo says, new CPR rules. If someone is not breathing, cover their nose and mouth. Well, how do we breathe? Don't we breathe through our nose and mouth? If somebody needs oxygen, why would we cover the nose and mouth? And then we always see these pictures of these nurses and doctors that are dancing during their shifts. But common sense should tell us if somebody's working a 12-hour shift, and if all hospitals are at full capacity because there's this huge pandemic, then how are these people finding time to go out in the hallways and dance? They should be taking care of sick people. If we're having a pandemic so serious that people are just falling over dead in the hospital corridors, then these people should be paying attention to those patients, not out in the hallways dancing. So these are just a few examples of, let's ask some questions and let's start to try to use some common sense. Have a good day. Namaste.